Today we're going through the second chapter of Galatians. We're going to give every single paragraph a title. The paragraph breakdown for the second chapter of Galatians is verses 1 through 10, then 11 through 16, and then 17 through 21. So there's 3 paragraphs. At the end, we'll give the entire chapter a title to help us remember what this chapter was about. Also picking out a key word that is the main idea of the chapter, and a key verse that contains that main idea of the chapter as clear as possible. As we go through, you will normally come across a verse that really stands out to you. That would be a favorite verse. As we come to the end of this video, I'd like you to put down your titles, key verse, key word, and your favorite verse in the comments below. So with that, let's begin. Galatians chapter 2, verse 1. Then, after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. I went up because of a revelation, and set before them, though privately, before those who seemed influential, the gospel that I proclaimed among the Gentiles, in order to make sure that I was not running or had not run in vain. But even Titus, who was with me, was not forced to be circumcised, though he was a Greek. Yet because of false brothers secretly brought in, who slipped in to spy out our freedom that we have in Christ Jesus, so that they might bring us into slavery. To them we did not yield in submission, not even for a moment, so that the truth of the gospel might be preserved for you. And from those who seem to be influential, what they were makes no difference to me. God shows no partiality. Those, I say, who seemed influential, added nothing to me. On the contrary, when they saw that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had been entrusted with the gospel to the circumcised, for he who worked through Peter for his apostolic ministry to the circumcised worked also through me for mine to the Gentiles. And when James and Cephas and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave the right hand of fellowship to Barnabas and me, that we should go to the Gentiles, and they to the circumcised. Only they asked us to remember the poor, the very thing I was eager to do. That is the end of the first paragraph. Go back and review, underline key words, pick out a title that represents the main idea of that paragraph. I will share my titles at the end. The second paragraph starts at verse 11. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile, and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? We ourselves are Jews by birth, and not Gentile sinners. Yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus, in order to be justified by faith in Christ and not by works of the law, because by works of the law no one will be justified. Again, go through. It's an intense paragraph as you see conflict in the early church and how it was done. Highlight it, pick out a title to help you remember that paragraph. The last paragraph. But if, in our endeavor to be justified in Christ, we too were found to be sinners, is Christ then a servant of sin? Certainly not. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law I died to the law, so that I might live to God. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God. For if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. And that is the conclusion of the chapter. So with that, my titles, verses 1 through 10, I titled it Influential Fellowship. Verses 11 through 16, Peter's hypocrisy. 17 through 21, Crucified for Christ. My chapter title, I chose Justified by Faith, and my key word was justified. The key verse I chose was 2:16, yet we know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified by faith in Christ and not by works of the law, because by works of the law, no one will be justified. My favorite verse is actually verse 18. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. As you go through, I would like you to put your titles down below, and then I can read through them and I can learn from your study. I pray that you are blessed.